All right. Well, my talk is a little bit more of, I think I wanted to talk a little bit about interacting with the community that we have to deal with and dealing with other professionals and pet owners. And I've been thinking a lot about this because of the amount of time that I spend talking to pet owners, talking to other veterinarians about what I do. And I hear a lot of things where I hear a veterinarian saying, well, that's absolutely wrong and you can't do this. And how dare you recommend fresh food for my patient that has cancer? And, all of these things I just hear all the time. And I've gotten to a point in my career, it's, I'm 30 years in, where I sort of say, you know what, I dare. That's what I do. I've been watching, I've been twisting my head back and forth and saying, does this make sense? And it does. So I put some thoughts together when I was thinking about doing this talk. And what I really thought was I should be there because I wanted it to be a conversation. I actually wanted to have more of a conversational talk going back and forth about what do you hear and what do I hear and what can we do? But since I can't be there, I think it's too tricky to do that via Zoom. So now you're off the hook because it's going to be a presentation. But the questions that I asked myself when I prepared this lecture really started out just saying, like, who am I convincing and why do they need convincing that some of these things that I now think are very obvious and basic, why do I have to convince anyone that this is the case? And what are we up against? What are we up against in the way that people think about it? So for me, I know that I hear a lot from veterinarians, about, the foods that we're talking about, the fresh food. If you're talking about fresh food, you're talking about pathogens and they're absolutely dangerous and you really should not be doing that. And people are parroting a lot of what they hear online because there's a lot of energy and interest in keeping that story going. People talk about balance, and that was a real concern. And so there is a little bit we have to fight back on that because for a long time we did have people at home saying, I'm feeding fresh food, I'm just feeding chicken meat, and doing that. So we all know that happens, and it's been a real problem medically because we do see secondary side effects from nutritional imbalances from fresh foods. That problem really has been disappearing. People are understanding more about balance. I'm seeing much less of that. And if you are thinking about getting a food that's in fact just a commercial food or doing some serious rotation and moving through a lot of different foods, that issue is much less relevant as well. That people are irresponsible about the way that they take care of the fresh food. And also there's a lot of sometimes I hear from other veterinarians too in the fresh food industry that they're getting threats about their licensing, that they shouldn't be practicing medicine because they're recommending things that their governing bodies don't recommend. So it's important for us to know that there is actually a lot of data and a lot to back up what we're saying. And it's okay to be confident and to go ahead and recommend these things. When I started, I was told that I would be brought up to, the professional board or something like that because of what I was recommending. But in order to do that, there really has to be a problem, and there really hasn't been. So that's a hard thing to, feel confident about if your livelihood depends on you, being a veterinarian. But it's something that now I think we can confidently say, okay, nobody's going to come out and take my license away. But, I wanted to think about what's the data, what else besides pet health is at stake when I'm talking about this. And I realize when I'm in the exam room, I'm talking about not just pet health, but I'm talking about sourcing. I'm talking about the pet food animals that, the food animals that are feeding our pets and their livelihood and their ability to have a good life. Just that alone, because I know we all love pets, as and we also love animals. We should love the food animals that feed our pets. And then I think I'm also talking about global health because I'm talking about trying to source sustainably, source from places where I know that it's not going to be ingredients and foods that are contaminated. So there's a lot at stake for our planet, for the use of pesticides, for resistant infections. A lot of these things, we're trying to make a sterile environment to feed a completely sterile food. we make a blank slate for weird pathogens to come in. So it's a meat product that's going to have no bacteria in there that'll be fighting the good fight against the bad bacteria. So those things are actually very relevant. They're relevant to me. They're relevant, I think, globally for global health and for our own health, because we're going to be continually creating more resistant and troublesome bacteria as we keep feeding more and more dead foods or foods that are very ultra processed and highly processed to, get rid of pathogens and to include a lot of these, I don't know, extra sources of leftover foods that the pet food industry says it has to put into pet food. So the interests that we're threatening are in fact really not veterinarians, and it's not pet owners, and it's not pets. It's pet food companies. It's the it's the sort of big pharma. It's going to be certain type of farming and agriculture are going to be threatened by what we're saying, and that's important because that's where big money is. So as people out there and talking about this, there's a lot of money at stake, and you have to be sure that you're protecting yourself and being aware of that there are going to be big stakeholders telling you to be quiet. And then, whose interests are we advocating? Again, I think it is the planet, it's our soil, it's farm animals, it's agriculture, it's the plants. It's going to be the pets, the pet owners, and I strongly think actually veterinarians. I think we're going to be helping veterinarians do a better job, feel more confident and happier about what they do if we're really operating with foods that make sense. So, and then, paying attention to things like, is what we're doing working? Is what they're doing working? Is the pet food industry getting better at all? Are the commercial, dry foods getting any better? Are we seeing anything from what's happened so far? And I think there has been a change. So that's sort of interesting. I don't think what's happening with kibble food is working still, but I think we're seeing a change in a focus a little bit about at least paying lip service to what we've been talking about for years. And the reason what we say is so disregarded is really mainly because there was a system set up to disregard it, to actively disregard this type of conversation. Certainly in vet school, certainly for pet parents, you just don't want to have to think about it. I have many pet parents who come to me as clients, and they still say, oh, I don't want to have to think about that. Just give me something to feed. And I know that's what's happened along the way, is all of us are a little bit overworked and overtired, and we don't want to have to think about every single thing that comes in and out of our houses, but really we should. So, can we add to this data? Can we add more to it? Absolutely. Each one of us can. We can do it right now. This isn't something that you have to be, one of the researchers at DogRisk, although that helps a lot. Thanks so much, guys. But you can be a regular person, and you can be adding to the data by, maybe posting or, sending to AI a study of an animal or the story of your own animal, and just getting it out there. The more we do this with clinical cases, the better we can be. And then what do we do with the hostility that comes at us? I mean, for me, I spend a lot of time just showering people with love. And I know that seems very cliche, but I try not to get my hackles up, and I try not to be the opposite of that, which would be to turn into a zealot and be like, I'm so into it that I can't even listen to what you're saying, and I'm just going to be furious that you're against me. I'm going to try to be that person who can bridge the gap. I'm going to be the person that says, I understand where you're coming from, because most people that are fighting this on our level, like other veterinarians or other pet owners or things like that, are really doing so because they believe that they're worried about what we're saying, and they're worried about this as a problem for animal health. The big industry that's doing it, that's nameless and faceless, and they're somewhere else. You're not going to see them. So you're going to see the downshoot from that, from all the information that's spread out there. So being loving and not being aggressive and against people, but just being for what you're for, is the way to go. And it's helped me a lot so that I feel less stressed, because it's not black and white. There's a lot, even in nutrition, we learn new things all the time. And I say to people all the time that I I'm learning things every day because I'm willing to say that I might be wrong every day. So I come into my practice and somebody brings something new and I think, wow, I don't know, maybe they're right and I'm wrong. And that's made a huge difference for me because I'm open to that possibility. And it matters to bring the profession and to bring pet care and pet health into the future and to give us the options that we have now even. So that's sort of how I presented it and thought about it globally. And then I think about the little pieces of it, right? So you'll be hearing a talk from Steve Brown and Susan Recker, who will be, I can't remember if they're just next or something, but they're going to be coming and talking about the Animal Diet Formulator, the software program that Steve Brown originally started with, to help us really know about balance in food. And there's a lot of people that say it doesn't matter, you don't have to know exact balance, you don't have to know this, but because the system and the industry is so, in my opinion, misinformed, we need to have this data and we need to know, at least, why shouldn't we know? Why can't we make it easy to know and to put things together? And then maybe, yes, balance with rotation, maybe, yes, balance with being rough, but it is really good to know this because we're going to be learning more about nutrition and we're going to need to know certain things that we're missing, that we maybe have lost along the way and aren't paying attention to. There's a lot of dark matter in nutrition that we don't know about. So the things we do know about, I think we should find out. We don't need to insist that we don't have to know about diet and balance. It's okay to do that too. And let's take everything we have and try to learn the best we can. And that's really why I'm very involved with making the Animal Diet Formulator the most excellent data-driven software out there to really help make a difference for pet owners and veterinarians and for formulators. So that's my little plug there for that. But it's more because of an internal intellectual feel that I have for the subject than it is that I have this product that I want to sell. Because really, out there, everybody wants to sell you something, and I think we're all sort of interested in that. To move that over, sorry, trying to move things on my screen. All right, well, and I want to impress again that I believe veterinarians are wonderful people in general. We're really fun at parties. If I was there, I would definitely be fun at a party there. And we're unique people. We all think a little bit individually. We're trying really hard. We've wanted to be veterinarians our whole lives. It's not like we are, bankers who just sort of fell into it. Although I do know one person who wanted to be a banker his whole life, but different story. But vets are also other things. Like we are also overworked and very, very busy. We're not really educated in nutrition. We're overwhelmed by patient and client distress. We feel it, we are really unable to keep up with everything because, again, there's a lot out there, a lot of information, a lot of new science, and a lot of things that are being studied and found out, and new medications. It's very hard to keep up. So focusing in a little bit is what's been happening more to veterinarians. Veterinarians are intellectually and emotionally involved with their cases, with each individual one. I know that I am. I think about my cases, as I'm having dinner, and it's a big deal. We also come out of school with a lot of financial stress, and we're affected by, negative comments that are happening about us or the industry. And we're individuals, but we're also part of a group. Like we're part of our own governing body. So we have to sort of pay attention to all that. So there's a lot going on. So just thinking, veterinarians they're so stubborn and they won't think about it. Actually, they're trying. Everybody's trying. So again, approach it with love. Approach your conversations with your veterinarians or with people that with the idea that people do want to do the best they can. They do love animals. They are trying. It's just when the information is bad, you can't help but do anything that is bad. I mean, it's very hard to do the right thing given that. So, I think about the veterinarians that I know and how much I love them. And I have this slide originally because I felt like whenever we talked about nutrition, the first thing that veterinarians do is hide. And that's what I think most people feel like when they talk to them. It's fine, it's fine. You can just feed that. It doesn't matter. Just whatever you're feeding, as long as their poop's okay, you're fine. But what I'm finding now is, we're not hiding anymore. We're out and we're saying things, we're getting out there. So there are a lot more veterinarians doing what I do because of the fact that I'm teaching through CIVT, because of the fact that other people are teaching, because of the fact that everyone that I know is out there giving their opinion and saying it out loud much more. So it does make a difference. And the more we do that and aren't afraid to do that, the better things are going to be. So, and look who's the captain of our ship, Anna. So this was from last year, going out to the island. No, I'm not sad about it. So miserable. Anyway, but the DogRisk team, I mean, it's an amazing resource for us. It's been giving us such good research. So I just think we really need, again, to give you a hand for everything that you're doing, because it's wonderful to be able to reference the research that you're doing and to say that it's out there. And I have so much respect for what you do and how you do it. So, and why are we doing this? We're doing this for our pets, for the food animals, for ourselves. And don't forget, we're doing it for ourselves, but we're doing it for these dogs because it matters to us that we're doing it. So in addition, I know we're going to be talking about how to talk to veterinarians about this subject, but part of it is a problem because veterinarians, again, still this very high rate of suicide amongst veterinarians globally. It's pretty bad. They're saying that male veterinarians are 2.1 times as likely and female veterinarians 3.5 times as likely to die from suicide as are members of the general public in the United States. And I think they're seeing that globally. So I believe that has a lot to do with the fact that we're, sort of like trying to do your job with an oven mitts on your hands. You don't have a great way to do it if you're feeling like all the time, the animals are getting sicker and nothing's really happening better. And you don't feel that satisfaction of a job well done if you don't know about nutrition. And they don't teach us about nutrition. And that's what we have to do. We have to gently bring the industry in to understand that. So you're in good company. This is some of last year's group. So go ahead, have confidence and think that you really can do this. There's a lot of support for what we're doing. So I would always remember that it is difficult to answer an unasked question. So a lot of times I'll want to be telling somebody about nutrition or about what they can do better, or a veterinarian, and the veterinarian didn't ask the question. They didn't even want to know. They're not interested. And they have been educated to not be interested. So it's really hard. And sometimes it's not because they really are being stubborn about it, or, even pet owners or whatever, that it's because we're all very busy. I know since COVID, everyone feels like we've all ramped up and we're all completely nuts. But we often just don't have time to consider what maybe could be the options. And the pet food industry has a lot invested in the status quo. So there is a huge machine and hundreds of smart people investing themselves in making sure that we don't know. So, and vets don't want to admit that they don't know. I mean, that's not good. And as a pet owner, if you've been feeding X food for so long, you don't want to admit that you might be actually doing something that could harm your own pet. So being a little invested in what you're doing, it's like, no, they're doing fine. The poop's fine. Everything looks good. I can feed this product because you've been paying for it and bringing it into the house and feeding it to your beloved pet. So the idea that you're going to be told you're doing the wrong thing is actually painful. So, and it's the same with veterinarians who want nothing more than to heal animals and to sort of open up the door to say that you might have been recommending something that's harmed animals for years is too painful. So, and then there's other things, again, these smart people are using these techniques to say, this is scientifically formulated. So scientifically formulated is used to validate this, the ultra processed foods, saying, oh no, but there's someone back there with a science degree and it's balanced and wonderful. There's no way that that's wrong. So I've even had people who have fed really good raw food, been my clients, and they say, but they still add some kibble just to make sure that the animals are getting all the nutrition they need. And that's just out there. that somehow in that dry little piece of kibble, there's more nutrition than in absolutely balanced food with, meats and vegetables and things. So, and then, one of the other things is, everybody does it. Everybody does this. Like there's, a multi-billion-dollar industry. It's too big to be failing. It's too big to be failing. Actually, we found out that's not true. So just because everybody does it doesn't mean that, it's not lemmings going over a cliff. So that's a hard go, but it's really hard to convince them to turn around. So what do we have? What are our aces in the hole? Well, we've got a lot of data, actually. We've got a lot of common sense, and we've got some brilliant people out there. So right now, I found fascinating, and I don't know if this was already mentioned, but the puppyhood diet, that's a DogRisk wonderful article, was it was slammed by, I think, it's SkepVet, and the response in the journal to that was so beautifully done. But that's part of what I want to do for this talk, is to say, yeah, these are the things that we need to do. So some of the points and counterpoints were, they said that there's a raw agenda out there, and people like DogRisk or people like me maybe have an agenda to get raw food out there because, I don't know, we have some evil plan to make raw food cover the earth. I know my house is made out of raw food, but that's the only thing that I do that way. But so I don't, that was really beautifully responded to, saying there is no agenda, right? And then very, very clearly saying that, that they were slammed for saying that, there's no way to know exactly what the, reason is that a raw food might be successful. It's like, that's true. Not all reasons for fresh food benefits are known, but they are shown. Like you can see that there are benefits, and we're researching to try to find out what those benefits are from, but we do see them and they're real. So, and, the one of the things that was mentioned was possibly the, reasons why could be, the absence of heat on the product, the macronutrient profile with the proteins and the fats and the carbohydrates and the contents and their origin. That could be something that's being researched. The bacterial load that's in there, because it would be, maybe helpful, along with other factors. It says, the response letter said, we now work with 10 hypotheses of why the raw food diet repeatedly comes up as healthier in our studies. And it repeatedly comes up as healthier in these studies. So being able to say that and say, yes, we're doing it, but also to say, what, it's common sense. It's, it's something that makes sense, and we're seeing it. So I love that in the response also, it just said, we will therefore now recommend that people who feed dry food supplement the diet with at least 20% raw. Just a recommendation, not based on the fact that you want to, rule the world with raw food, but just because it is healthier. And that's what this organization is looking for. So that was lovely. And then about pathogens, regarding raw foods, we have time after time through published articles and 10 university student theses in Finnish, seen that there are health benefits when owners use a raw diet for their dogs compared to dry, to say that, this is real and we are not seeing pathogens. So the health claims are real, the biome improvements are real, and all of this, the safety of the raw food is real. So, they were saying that the data was cherry picked, which was clearly not true. It's just using words that are catchwords for people to say, oh, it's no good research. So this type of response to research is out there, but a thoughtful response can make a huge difference. So, and they talk about funding bias, which is hilarious to me from a university, because the funding that you have is so varied and, not involved in what's happening. There are definitely some funding support from raw food companies, but that's not all of the support, versus the people that were the detractors. All of their support seems to be coming from the conventional pet food industry and dry foods. So, And then saying that we will and continue to report on raw feeding not being dangerous for neither dogs nor family. In the risk analysis study, we found only 3 verified cases of food pathogen transmission from raw dog food to humans in 16,475 households feeding raw, and in 98,353 pet years at risk. So, and the study was replicated. So the idea that it's just whether they're saying they think they're finding pathogens in the food and there's recalls or whatever is one thing, but also is there actual illness is another. So that's just a wonderful thing to look at and see. And I just like that it was very clear, very strong, and a very thoughtful response. So there's other articles, a couple other articles here that I just thought maybe I'd make sure that you are all aware of. And then cases, as I said, if you're out there and you can be looking at a case. I mean, I have a case. This is Jackson. So when he was a puppy, it's really hard probably to see that on the picture of the little puppy, but he's skin and bones there. You can see his ribs on the picture. He arrived at 10 months old with, he had Giardia, but he had already had dental tartar at 10 months. He had poor muscle condition, his body scores were really low. And his muscle score was really low vitamin B, and chronic diarrhea and vomiting, all of that. And he's 10 months old. So, and he'd been eating only kibble foods with more and more fiber because they were trying to get him to not have diarrhea and vomiting. So they're feeding more and more empty powdered cellulose and fiber, and his muscle condition score is getting worse, and he's just looking worse and worse. So, and he just wouldn't even eat the food anymore, even though he was starving. So it's really sad, as you can imagine, and just pooping out this food 4 to 5 times a day. So, and the macronutrient content of the pet food was averaging about 24% protein, but a lot of it was sort of a non-meat. They were going to hydrolyzed protein, legume sources, only 10% fat for this puppy, 10% moisture, and then, the rest of little bits, but it was 50% carbohydrates. So, empty sugar. So it's like what's happening in humans in food ghettos and things like that. They're seeing, in the US and in places where you can't get fresh food, or in places where processed food is suddenly becoming more prevalent. You're seeing this sort of, high calorie, no nutrition food. When we changed him to a fresh, raw, balanced food, within a few weeks, all of his GI signs were gone. He was gaining weight and his energy daily. He's 11 years old today, his main issues are a little bit of musculoskeletal and arthritis problems, which he comes in for periodically, but he's awesome. So, being able to put cases out there, that makes a huge difference. Sorry, I'm gonna put this on so we know timing. There's a lot of data available to us in our everyday life. So remember that while a good diet cannot cure all ills, a poor diet will always create health issues. I just say that a lot because it's really important. We know that that's the truth. Sometimes I'll say, I put you on a really good diet and it didn't cure everything. I'm really sorry, but that bad diet was never going to help. We had to get past that, right? So you have to start somewhere, add something fresh. We have all this stuff. So if you're talking to veterinarians or talking to owners, one of the best things you can do is try not to convince them so much with just words. Say, just try this one little thing. Let's try a little thing. You can add a little something to the food, add an egg, or add some fresh vegetables and mushrooms, or do something else. And that you'll start to see this vibrant health that I see from my pets every day. And if you want to make your own food, then do it well. Don't just like, I'm going to make food by, adding rice and chicken together. Now I have a bowl of food. Make sure that you're formulating it to some a standard that makes sense. Otherwise, you're just going to prove everybody else right. So there's courses at CIVT, at the College of Integrative Veterinary Therapies, as well, on nutrition. We're getting certification courses for every level of students. So if you want to learn more about that, you certainly can. And don't forget cats. I know we talk a lot about dogs, but I do feel like cats are, in there too, giving, sometimes if you have to do, like a food-based supplement or something like that to get it in easier, because it's hard to get cats to eat things sometimes. But I don't know, I have cats that are just wolfing down, catting down, tigering down, I don't know, the fresh foods, and just, they're amazing. They're doing really, really well. So don't forget talking about cats and talking about pet foods and doing that. There are a lot of sort of typical longevity supplements that you can suggest. You can suggest it to your friends who are veterinarians, or you can suggest it to other pet owners and just say, well, just try this a little bit and see what you see, try a little bit. Eggs, sardines, mushrooms, fresh meats, or, some fish, add a little butter, butter's amazing. I live by butter. Superfoods, blueberries, spirulina, broccoli, adding a little bit of extra fiber, or, certainly letting them chew on raw bones, bone broth, goat milk, yogurts. There's lots and lots of different things that can be added, and then different supplements too that along the way can help with longevity. I think I showed my favorite video last time. This is because rhinos are disappearing. I think we all should see them now and again. It's feeding an apple to a rhino, which actually is reasonably appropriate. But, trying to give a little bit of something that's fresh, if they're always eating something that's not fresh, can make a huge difference. So, and then you get people sort of hooked and they're interested. So, and one of the places that I feel like you always have a little chink in the armor of, I'm not going to listen about nutrition, is with cancer. It's got a double-edged sword, because people are freaking out about, oh, we're doing chemo now, so now we can't let the animal have any bacteria in their mouths, even though nobody says you can't run around outside and step and poop and lick your fur and lick another dog's butt. And nobody's saying that. They're not putting them in a bubble, and they're not stopping them from having bacteria from the whole world. But boy, you better not have a raw food in their bowl, because that might bring some terrible pathogens, even though they've been tested and looked at. So it's a very strange thing that goes on with pet food and chemo and oncologists. I get it, because I've sort of fallen prey to that, but it doesn't really make sense to feed a less nutritious food to an animal that has cancer, or to feed a food that has more carbs to an animal that has cancer. So looking at this as an opportunity to talk about what you can do with cancer. So for me, I always say, okay, yeah, with cancer, we can do conventional treatments, we can do surgery or chemo or other things, radiation. We should be avoiding pesticides and toxins, because it's proven over and over again that that's a cause of cancer in many, many places. So that's pretty easy, low-hanging fruit, because then you can say, oh, those kibble foods they're not organic. They're sourcing a lot of grains and different types of things that have glyphosate and pesticides in them. Let's avoid that. You want something more fresh. Then you can look a little bit more at, the macronutrients and the micronutrients in the foods that may or may not be helping cancer, like vitamin D, things like that. And then you can be talking about that, and how maybe there's certain nutrients that do better when they're fresh, and that can help fight cancers. And then you're getting an anti-inflammatory diet, and you're looking at the different macronutrients there. And then you're thinking about the meal timing and trying to do the once a day feeding, so they're getting a little 24-hour semi-fast going on to help their body clean up better. And then you're having them feed at random times so they don't mess up their all the pH of their system by anticipating meals and overproducing acids. So, and then a periodic real fast. Ketogenic diets, looking at those for how they help with cancer. Then, supplements and herbs and things like CBD, THC, testing for toxins, looking at genetic markers, and then nutritional testing, and good exercise for cancer cases. They shouldn't be sitting in a box having cancer and not moving around. So all of those things, it's a good way. People are often going, there's cancer, I better get an integrative look. And that's something that really does happen. So it's a big place where I feel like I get a lot more in. I can talk to other veterinarians, and it works out pretty well. So there's lots of different arguments. I just picked out one randomly from the internet about, that formal evidence exists for claims by raw feeding proponents of altered intestinal microbiome and subjectively improved stool quality. It's so not subjective in a way. Like, that is just absolutely a hard fact. Get it? A hard fact, hard poop. Anyway, there is robust evidence. There is plausible mechanism going on for this. There is a lot of things that go on for our claimed benefits. And so we just need to be sure that we're looking at those things I have a score for poop so that we can look at numbers. Everybody wants to have a number. You can't just be like, the poop's amazing and hard and easy to pick up. Like, you need a number for that. So you can do, a 1 to 5 score, or, 1 to 4 score, whatever you like. And then we don't see for the thousands and thousands of animals out there that are eating fresh food, we are not seeing infection affecting pets or household members. We're just not seeing it. So that's the case. So I also think another easy target is to go with ultra processing. So there's so much evidence. We have a lot actually about ultra processing and what's going on for human in the human world. So a lot of nutritionists agree that ultra processing is in fact a problem. So when you have an ultra processed food, you are creating a health disaster, really. So we're seeing that more. So it's an easy target. You can, if you know the definition of ultra processing in pet foods, it's a little different than what they're talking about in people, because in pet foods, it's even worse. So it's these really high heat extruded and processed foods. They sometimes once extruded, but sometimes, high heat processed 2 or 3 times with an ingredient, and then the combination, and then the end product. So and then these are industrial formulations that are created from compounds that are extracted, derived, or synthesized from food or food substrates. And those ultra processed foods are typically they have a lot of other ingredients that are artificial. They're food additives, they're colors, they're preservatives. They tend to be inexpensive. They tend to be imperishable, so they can live forever on a shelf, which everybody seems to love. I'm not sure why we love that with food. We really shouldn't love that. And they're easily consumed because they're in a little pelleted form. For me, I think I would choke on them, and they are usually highly palatable because they've added a lot, and then some of that heat processing can make some smell for them. So human nutritionists absolutely recommend avoiding processed and ultra processed foods because they can negatively affect health and lifespan for several reasons, which are, I'll go through a little bit, but the fresh foods are definitely healthier in terms of what we'd say for humans. So we should be able to say that for pets too, that a fresh food, is going to be healthier if we can get a good fresh food for them. So they just said that in addition, going to foods that are going to contain all of those different chemicals, they're also going to be a problem if they're not organic and they're using pesticides. They're seeing more and more studies where we're showing the difference between organic and not organic foods, as the people that are on organic food have a much reduced risk from cancer. So that's actually a new piece of what we can be talking about, because it's actually being researched and shown that that's true. So if fresh foods are being recommended for an omnivore, which is what we are, what should a carnivore eat? Should a carnivore eat more or less? And so, the USDA dietary guideline says that people should have less than 10% of their calories from sugar, and we should have more of it from vegetables and fresh foods. And when we're looking at a lot of these carnivore foods, we're seeing foods that are 50% sugar. So, and it's sugar being carbohydrates, being potatoes, being things like that are going to break down into sugar. So it's definitely going to be more than what we need it to be. So then we have also the byproducts of the high heat processing, which I'm sure we've talked about quite a bit, but that's something that's low hanging fruit for us. Advanced glycation end products should not be in food. It shouldn't be there because it's going to create a problem for the animal. It reduces lifespan and it causes health problems over time. So we're always fighting those by, giving them things that are going to, like the sulforaphanes and things like that, to help fight them. Let's don't actually put them in their mouths. So, and then, a lot of people will say, you need to answer my questions about this, but it's okay to change the conversation and answer the questions that you want to answer about it, or bring out the points that are relevant to you. So just because we're talking about nutrient-centric perspective and they're saying these are the parameters with which we define nutrition and we have to do it this way, they don't. It's wrong. And so we're not really capturing the effects of a complex food matrix, which is really important. The dark matter of nutrition, the things we don't know about, are happening in between the interactions between ingredients and nutrients that are out there. And we need to be saying that that's important to see food do what it's supposed to do. Maybe we don't even know, but we need it to be there. So, we want to make sure that this highly processed food is not the norm, if we can talk about it this way. So we should acknowledge that there's unknown on both sides, and that's okay. But we're going to be trying to do the thing that makes the most sense, the most common sense from ancestral goes here.
Barbara, you have to wrap up, please.
I know I just looked at the clock and I freaked out.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. And then we talk about biome, right? So, and the biome is in there with bacteria, things like that. So it's relevant to everything else. So I always am thinking, is the system, is it doing its job? And what are we working for? So we will want to be, I'll just skip by this. I think I had already showed it anyway. Dental disease, I don't have to go into, but it's also really obvious in there. So it's a great place to have a good conversation with someone. The teeth looking really bad is really because the food is really bad, right? So we need to have better, healthier food. Talk about the benefits of chewing on bones. There's a lot of benefits from bone chewing, but also just really healthy food and a healthy biome in the mouth. And then we're trying not to make assumptions without making sense. So don't push too hard when you're talking to a vet. We can go to very, very specific things. Remember the melamine thing that people were allowed to do all kinds of stuff, outrage and lawsuits, but not much happened. So we really have a lot of problems. This ultra processed food is recognized right now that it's a problem, but somehow we're not doing it in pet food. So we need to be thinking about solving this healthcare problem by looking at it like a puzzle, make sense of what we're seeing, and then remember these points. So I've got these here that you can eventually, have as maybe a little bit of a guideline, but people are talking about pathogens. Are the raw foods actually causing illness? Is there a way to do good balance with it? Yes, it's being done. People talk about grain-free, that kind of thing, but it doesn't say it just says what's not in the food. It isn't saying what's in the food. Like my wallpaper is grain-free, but it's not something I'm going to feed anyway. So those are the kinds of words and things that are put out there. So, and why is there so much filler in the foods? Why is it, why are we worried about how expensive it is? We should be worried about how cheap the other food is, because they must be cheating somewhere. So what else can you do? So there's lots to learn, lots to do. You can do courses, you can read all these fun books. I know Connor's book, it's already been AI'd. Hi, Connor. There's research and education. If you want to donate to other research besides DogRisk, we're trying to do more for the Royal Animal Health University as well. So there's a little one of those QR codes for that. If you're interested, that funds go to integrated veterinary student scholarships and education programs and research into integrative medicine techniques and tools. The ADF, you can get a discount for ADF because you're here, which is fun. I think somebody's going to talk about this dog here, who is the oldest dog in the world. Got a nice picture of them from Karen Becker and his feet, cute feet. You can get a discount for CIVT courses and for webinars as well. And then I've got my resources with books and the documentary Pet Fooled. And that's it.
Super. Thank you.
References, and a cool seahorse.
Is that a video or?
No, it isn't going. I tried to make it go. It should be a video because he moves really cool. Sorry, that's it. That's what you get.
He looks like a plant. So is that
doesn't he?
kind of ultimate food, which is like an animal that looks like a plant?
Exactly. Put it all together right there. It's amazing.
Super. Thank you very much, Barbara.
Absolutely.